You can't reach the top of the mountain if the ground beneath you is crumbling, right? To build a firm-wide culture of performance, you first need people who protect the baseline. So we start at the ground level of Tier 5 leadership.
The guardians of the blueprint.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this. We start at role number 41. This is the quality assurance or technical standards lead. And the projected annual salary here is $125,000.
Yep, that's the baseline.
The source uses this brilliant metaphor, actually calling this person the studio's immune system. But right off the bat, I have to ask how that actually works in practice, because the text mentions that performance details are incredibly fragile.
They are. Think about something as simple as, like, insulation. An architect can draw one perfectly unbroken line of insulation on a blueprint. But on the actual construction site, a plumber has to run a pipe through that wall, or, a structural beam interrupts the framing.
Oh, right, because real life gets in the way.
Exactly. If the standards are loose, that one perfect line on paper turns into 5 massive gaps in the real world. Subcontractors will just, cut holes and leave them.
Because they're just trying to get their specific job done.
Right. So the QA-led creates the repeatable, standardized technical language that tells the crew exactly how to seal around that pipe. They stop small drafting ambiguities from becoming incredibly expensive, leaky failures down the road.
I have to push back here, though.
Go for it.
When people hear quality assurance or technical standards, they usually groan. I mean, in almost every industry, people view QA as pure bureaucracy. How does someone in this role avoid being seen as, like, the office traffic cop who just walks around handing out tickets and slowing everyone down?
That is the ultimate cultural tightrope for this position. The source text emphasizes that this leader has to make standards feel like speed and safety, not punishment.
Speed and safety.
Yeah. Instead of just redlining drawings and yelling at junior designers, they are actively gathering feedback from the design teams. They find out what specific technical details are bottlenecking the workflow, and they update the firm's templates to solve those problems.
So they're actually helping.
Exactly. They refine the systems so they stay alive, rather than letting them turn into fossilized rules that everyone just tries to, quietly bypass.
They make it easier to do the right thing than the wrong thing. I love that.
It's crucial.
But a perfect, error-free blueprint doesn't matter if the construction crew runs out of time and starts cutting corners to meet a deadline.
Yeah.
I mean, that creates an entirely new problem, time and resource management.
Which brings us to role number 40.
Right, the project manager for architecture, sitting at a salary of $127,000. If QA is the immune system, the PM is the conductor managing scope, schedule, and budget.
And their specific environmental duty revolves around protecting what the text calls performance scope.
Performance scope.
Yeah. We've all been part of a project where, grand sustainability targets are boldly declared at the kickoff meeting, right?
Oh, totally. Everyone's very excited.
Right, only to be quietly abandoned when deadline panic sets in. Time gets tight, budgets get squeezed, and suddenly the complex green features are the first things thrown overboard.
So how does the PM actually stop that from happening? The text says they integrate it into the schedule, but what does that look like on a random Tuesday?
Well, they don't just put buy eco-friendly lumber on a to-do list. They map out the exact week the supply chain needs to deliver that specific, sustainably sourced lumber.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, if they don't lock that into the critical path of the schedule months in advance, the construction crew will inevitably hit a delay, panic, and just run to a local hardware store to buy standard, high-carbon lumber just to stay on schedule.
Just to get it done.
Right. The PM anticipates those breaking points and builds a schedule rigid enough to hold the line when the pressure hits.
That makes perfect sense for one building. But what happens when a client is, say, a retail chain or a school district, and they want to build 50 locations? You can't just copy-paste a building.
No, you absolutely cannot.
Which introduces role number 39, right? The senior project manager for multi-site projects earning $130,000.
Yeah, managing replication is a totally different beast. When you are rolling out dozens of locations, standardizing a high-performance approach multiplies the environmental benefit exponentially.
Because you're doing it 50 times.
Exactly. But doing that without ignoring the harsh realities of different physical sites requires deep systems thinking. I mean, a school built in humid Florida requires a completely different moisture management strategy than the exact same school design built in freezing Minnesota.
Right, you'd get mold in one, then freeze in the other.
Exactly. The senior PM has to standardize the process of high performance while leaving enough flexibility in the system to adapt to local climates and, soil conditions.
Yeah. So we've got the baseline protected. We have the immune system catching the errors, the conductor holding the schedule, and the scaler multiplying the impact.
Yeah.
But getting standard protocol on paper is entirely different from getting the actual human beings in an office to care on a daily basis.
Oh, 100%. You need leaders who can integrate these abstract standards into the daily pulse of the firm, the integrators and the engine.
Okay, so we step up to role number 38, the associate of architecture, earning $132,000. And the source designates this as a trust designation.
Right, they're the face of the project.
Exactly. Yeah. They're the face of the project to the client, and their job is to make sure sustainability isn't siloed off in some obscure subcommittee somewhere.
Right.
They integrate performance thinking into everyday, mundane decisions, like picking carpet materials or weighing minor cost trade-offs.
And standing right next to them in the hierarchy is role number 37, the associate of sustainability and performance at $134,000.
Okay, what do they do?
This role is dedicated entirely to bridging internal factions.
Internal factions.
Yeah, in any large firm, you have a design team that desperately wants the building to look like a glass jewel box, then a delivery team that needs it built cheaply and on time, and a performance team obsessing over the carbon footprint of all that glass.
Reading this part of the essay, I instantly thought of a corporate family therapist.
That is exactly what it is.
Right, you have all these different departments with completely contradictory priorities, and this person has to somehow translate those competing desires into one surviving plan that, keeps the family together.
It takes immense diplomatic skill, and more importantly, this role is the firm's primary defense against greenwashing.
How so?
They translate vague green intent into hard, measurable results. When the design team proposes that massive glass wall, this associate doesn't just nod, they immediately run the hard data on energy spikes, carbon impact, and indoor environmental quality.
So they bring the receipts?
They bring the receipts, they workshop the trade-offs directly with the designers so the client gets a clear picture of the risks and value, rather than just a glossy rendering with, like, a tree drawn next to it.
That brings us to a really fascinating position. Role number 36, the studio operations manager at $136,000. This is the firm's logistics brain. They handle staffing, resourcing, IT workflows, and managing employee burnout.
Yep, the engine room.
I have to admit, when I first saw this on the list, I was completely thrown. I mean, wait, how does an HR and logistics role actually move the needle on the environment? It feels totally disconnected from the architecture itself.
I get why you'd think that, but operations amplifies impact by making capability scalable. The essay mentions their oversight of BIM standards.
BIM.
Yeah, BIM stands for Building Information Modeling. It's not just a 3D drawing, it is a digital database of the building. Every virtual door and window has data attached to it.
Oh, I see.
So if the sustainability team invents a brilliant new workflow for tracking the carbon footprint of those windows, it doesn't matter at all if the software isn't set up properly or if the junior architects don't know how to use it.
That makes total sense.
The studio ops manager ensures those digital workflows and training programs are consistent across the entire studio.
It is wild to think that saving thousands of tons of carbon emissions doesn't necessarily come down to, like, inventing a new type of solar panel, but rather to an operations manager organizing a better IT workflow on a Tuesday afternoon.
It's all about the infrastructure.
They build the machine that builds the buildings.
Precisely. But even with operations humming perfectly, the firm still has to go out into the real world, win work, and prove their theories against the unforgiving laws of physics.
Which launches us into our third segment, the reality checkers.
Let's get into it.
We start with role number 35, the practice area lead for sustainable design at $140,000. They are the ones who define what sustainable design actually means for the studio's brand. They use strategy and storytelling to make sustainability a core differentiator to win the client's business.
Right, they secure the work. But once the contract is signed, they bear the immense responsibility of ensuring the actual physical delivery matches their initial sales pitch.
Right.
They have to make sure the firm can actually cash the checks its marketing department is writing.
And to make sure those checks don't bounce, we need the person who understands the physics. Role number 34, the practice area lead for building science, earning $142,000.
This is a deeply technical, vital role. They link those lofty sustainability goals to building reality to prevent catastrophic unintended consequences. The text specifically highlights their focus on things like envelope performance and thermal bridging.
Okay, for someone outside the industry, what exactly is thermal bridging and why is it so dangerous?
Okay, imagine a highly insulated, incredibly warm building in the middle of winter.
Sounds cozy.
It is, until you realize the architect designed a continuous steel beam that runs from the warm interior ceiling straight through the wall to support an outdoor balcony.
Oh no.
Yeah. Steel conducts heat beautifully. That beam acts like an invisible superhighway, sucking the heat right out of the room and dumping it into the freezing outside air. That is a thermal bridge.
And when warm, moist indoor air hits that freezing cold steel beam inside the wall,
You get condensation.
yikes.
And condensation trapped inside a wall turns a multi-million-dollar eco-friendly building into a toxic mold factory.
That is a nightmare.
It is. The building science lead prevents that. They stopped the project from trapping moisture or overheating during the summer just because a designer wanted an energy-efficient skylight facing the wrong direction. We aren't just talking about occupant comfort here. We are talking about preventing massive, firm-destroying legal liabilities and warranty claims.
Here is where it gets really interesting. Right above the building science lead is role number 33, the technical director of architecture, making $145,000. They are the ultimate protector of the firm's technical quality and risk posture.
The buck stops with them, technically.
Looking at this dynamic, I keep thinking about the concept of a beautiful disaster. You know those avant-garde buildings that look absolutely breathtaking in an architectural magazine? But the people working inside have to wear winter coats at their desks. The roof chronically leaks, and the glare from the custom windows is blinding.
Oh, we've all seen those buildings.
Right. So is the technical director basically the person who has to walk around telling visionary designers no?
In many ways, yes, but it is a highly strategic no. They protect clients from buildings that look magnificent but perform miserably.
It's about risk management.
Exactly. Triaging technical risks across all active projects requires immense judgment and a deep comfort with liability and high-risk decisions. If a design is a beautiful disaster waiting to happen, the technical director is the one with the authority to step in and force a redesign before a single yard of concrete gets poured.
They are the ultimate safety net for the laws of physics.
Well put.
But clients don't just pay for physics, right? They pay for breathtaking design. So if the reality checkers are focused on risk and science, our next segment takes us up the ladder to the executive principals who have to fuse that science with aesthetics and profitability. We are entering the realm of balancing beauty and chaos.
This is where the tension within the firm is at its absolute peak, and where leadership needs to be masterful.
Role number 32 is the design director for environmental architecture at $150,000. The text describes this role as the ultimate tension balancer, constantly weighing beauty versus performance versus cost versus constructability.
Because historically, those forces are locked in a bitter war. The beautiful option is wildly expensive. The highly efficient option looks like a concrete bunker. The design director's goal is to make those competing forces feel seamlessly aligned. They are ensuring that performance becomes part of the physical form itself, rather than just designing a standard glass box and slapping a bunch of solar panels onto the roof as an afterthought to appease the client.
But integrating those forces introduces massive complications, which requires role number 31, the principal of project delivery, at $155,000. They're the delivery authority, overseeing the portfolios and ensuring the firm actually turns a profit.
And sustainability commitments introduce staggering complexity into a project. I mean, you are dealing with entirely new, untested green materials, incredibly complex supply chains, and rigorous environmental testing protocols.
It sounds overwhelming.
It can be. The principal of delivery is the executive who prevents that sheer complexity from devolving into budget chaos. They stabilize the teams under extreme pressure so that a temporary budget crunch doesn't result in all the green features being value engineered out of the project.
They keep the incredibly complicated train on the tracks.
Exactly.
And then at role number 30, we have the principal of design, earning $160,000. This is the guardian of the firm's overall design reputation. They set the design standards and lead the flagship projects.
The big visionary role.
Right. And the source uses this amazing phrase for what they're trying to achieve: performance beauty. I read that and instantly thought of evolutionary biology.
Oh, that's an interesting connection.
Yeah, like if you look at a falcon or a great white shark, the most ruthlessly efficient adaptation to an environment often looks the most elegant to the human eye. Form perfectly following function. How does a principal actually enforce that kind of performance beauty in a corporate architecture firm?
That analogy hits at the absolute core of what this role does. They ensure that sustainability is expressed in the architecture. Performance beauty is designing a roof with a specific dramatic overhang that perfectly blocks the harsh high summer sun, but allows the low winter sun to naturally heat the floors.
Oh wow, so the building is doing the work passively.
Yes. The building's geometry itself is doing the work. To enforce this, the principle of design needs immense internal credibility. They have to speak the ethereal language of the visionary artists while completely understanding the harsh realities of the building science team we talked about earlier. They unite the design and technical factions under one unified, high-performance aesthetic.
Which finally brings us to our last segment, the absolute pinnacle of the list, the vanguard of decarbonization. These are the executive directors who don't just shape the firm. They are attempting to shape the market and the narrative of the industry itself.
The heavy hitters.
Let's look at role number 29, the principle of sustainability and decarbonization, at $165,000.
This is a highly specialized executive role. They operate at the level of macro carbon pathways. They are tracking global environmental policy shifts and framing long-term real estate risk for the clients at the highest corporate levels.
Moving to role number 28, the director of building performance, at $168,000. Their domain is energy, comfort, daylight, and something the text calls post-occupancy learning. What exactly are they learning after the building is already finished?
This is a critical feedback loop that most industries ignore.
Really?
Oh yeah, post-occupancy learning means going back to the building a year after people actually move in and measuring the hard data to see if the math matches the reality.
That makes so much sense.
Right. Did the building actually save the energy the firm promised it would? Are the employees inside actually comfortable, or are they constantly plugging in space heaters under their desks?
Oh, the space heaters under the desk.
Yeah.
A classic sign of a failing building.
Exactly. The director of building performance turns that hard post-occupancy data into a definitive client advantage, proving that their designs genuinely reduce operational costs.
And finally, the top of the ladder. Number 1 on our deep dive list today, role number 27, the director of sustainability, making $172,000. They are the firm's ultimate sustainability authority on strategy, governance, and market positioning.
The top of tier 5.
But I have to admit, looking at these final 3 roles, I was slightly confused. At the absolute top of the ladder, we have 3 distinct roles, making between $165K and $172K, and to an outsider, they all kind of sound like the boss of green.
Right, it can sound repetitive.
Why does a firm need a decarbonization principal and a performance director and a sustainability director? Isn't that redundant?
It looks like pure corporate bloat until you parse out their specific jurisdictions from the text. Think of it as a tripod holding up the entire firm.
Okay.
Role 29, the decarbonization principle, focuses entirely outward. They are looking at market influence, macro carbon strategies, and winning massive future work.
Got it.
Role 28, the performance director, focuses entirely inward. They are the masters of the hard data, the physics, the analysis workflows, and that post-occupancy reality we just discussed.
So one is looking at the horizon, and the other is looking at the math.
Exactly. And that leaves Role 27, the director of sustainability. They sit above both as the overarching authority. They own the ultimate narrative.
The ultimate narrative.
Yeah, their job is to constantly reconcile what the firm claims publicly in its glossy marketing materials versus what it actually delivers privately in its hard data. They align the firm's environmental ideals with its core business growth. They are the final word.
So what does this all mean for us? We started this deep dive talking about freezing office buildings and the myth of perfect blueprints. And going down this list, from role 41 to 27, it becomes so clear that an abstract concept like sustainability doesn't just happen because an architect drew a green building.
Not at all.
It requires an incredibly complex living ecosystem. You need the immune systems catching bad insulation details, the conductors holding the supply chain schedule, the therapists translating between warring departments, the reality checkers enforcing the laws of physics, and the visionaries balancing beauty and budget chaos.